Before we dive in, just make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you never miss the kinds of obscure, powerful survival knowledge we uncover here. Today, I'm taking you into a secret chapter of the Second World War history that's rarely discussed, even among serious historians. Yet it has direct lessons for anyone interested in self-sufficiency, prepping, or wartime survival. We're going to explore a garden method so potent that it could seemingly produce infinite food, and why governments went out of their way to suppress it. During the Second World War, food shortages were a harsh reality across Europe and parts of Asia. Families were forced to get creative, turning any patch of land into a food-producing resource. Victory gardens are well known, but there was one method that surpassed them all, known in certain circles as deep-rooted regenerative planting, which combined soil science, plant selection, and an almost radical approach to crop rotation. This method allowed families to harvest year after year from the same plot of land without exhausting it, something considered revolutionary at the time. What made this method different from typical gardening was its focus on soil regeneration. Instead of the standard practice of tilling and replanting the same crops over and over, which rapidly depletes nutrients, this system used layers of organic matter, strategic plant pairing, and root depth management to keep the soil fertile indefinitely. Families would start by choosing plants that naturally complemented each other: deep-rooted legumes that fixed nitrogen, shallow-rooted vegetables that consume different nutrients, and cover crops that protected the soil from erosion. Over time, the soil itself became a living partner in food production, rather than just a medium to hold seeds. One of the most astonishing aspects of this method was its use of what we now call permaculture principles, decades before permaculture was formally defined. For instance, carrots and parsnips were often planted alongside peas, with the legumes enriching the soil with nitrogen, while the root vegetables drew nutrients from different levels. Fallen leaves, composted kitchen waste, and even grass clippings were layered strategically to maintain moisture and feed microbes. The result was a self-sustaining plot that required minimal intervention while producing far more food than conventional gardens. Families reportedly harvested continuously, even in winter months, by utilizing cold frames or by layering crops in a way that insulated them against frost. The practical applications of this method are as relevant today as they were 70 years ago. For modern preppers or survivalists, starting a regenerative garden requires no special chemicals, expensive tools, or massive land. Start by observing your soil and layering compost and mulch to maintain organic content. Select plant pairings that complement rather than compete. Plant deep-rooted and shallow-rooted vegetables together to maximize nutrient uptake. Consider cover crops during dormant seasons to protect the soil and naturally suppress weeds. Even small urban backyards or container gardens can benefit from these principles. So why did governments step in and in some cases actively discourage this technique? The answer lies partly in wartime economics and partly in political control. Governments were focused on centralized food distribution and rationing systems to ensure that every citizen received a share. If families could effectively produce their own unlimited food, it disrupted these carefully managed networks. Moreover, authorities feared that widespread self-sufficiency could undermine social compliance. Independent food sources meant that families could survive without government rations, which was seen as a potential threat to control during wartime. There are documented cases in the UK and parts of occupied Europe where authorities limited access to certain high-yield crops or published official gardening guidelines that deliberately minimized regenerative practices. This historical context makes the method even more intriguing. It wasn't illegal in the criminal sense, but it was actively discouraged, buried in plain sight, and largely forgotten once the war ended. Most people today have never heard of it, yet the principles are timeless. They offer a blueprint for producing food sustainably, maximizing yield, and reclaiming resilience at a time when supply chains are increasingly fragile. To apply this knowledge today, start small. Select a plot, even just a raised bed, and focus on soil layering and plant pairing. Rotate crops in ways that mimic natural ecosystems rather than depleting the soil. Use compost aggressively and, well, observe how different plants interact over time. As your understanding grows, expand to multiple beds or community garden plots. In urban or suburban areas, even a single regenerative container garden on a balcony can provide continuous harvests if managed correctly. This is living history applied directly to modern survival and self-reliance. Understanding this WWII garden method isn't just about history. It's about reclaiming a lost skill that allowed ordinary people to thrive under extraordinary pressure. It reminds us that innovation often comes from necessity, and that knowledge buried by governments or mainstream authorities can hold the key to independence and survival. Every serious prepper, historian, and garden enthusiast can take a lesson from this. Food security doesn't start at the store. It starts in the soil beneath your feet. If you found this deep dive valuable, make sure to subscribe and share it with fellow history buffs and survival enthusiasts. Hit that bell so you never miss our next uncovering of forgotten wartime techniques that are still useful today. The lessons from history are powerful, but only if we act on them. Super, the prepper historian.